I'm Clint, and welcome to Swatches art stream number 89. We are continuing these art streams, and this episode, like normal, is about the art challenges. So we're going to be reviewing some finals for the MTG and Warcraft themed art challenge, although I don't think we actually have any Warcraft wins. I think it's all MTG this time. And I am joined again by our community moderator, Anna. So I'll get unmute you. How are you doing, Anna?
Hi everyone. I'm a little bit sick. I'm sorry. I hope my voice does not annoy anyone today. I hope you can hear me because today we are working from Discord. If it doesn't work, tell us please. So we switch over to Skype.
Yeah, normally we have you patch through Skype, but if for some reason the audio is weird, let us know, but I think it'll be okay. So if you're new to the channel, then welcome. This is an art education channel where we try to give feedback and encouragement to help you improve your skills. I am a professional illustrator. I've done work with Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons, Smite game, done some work with Imagine Effects magazine, amongst others. And I'm trying to give you the best feedback possible to help you also be able to get into the professional illustration arena. So we're going to begin by taking a look at some I still did not fix the 5-5 numbering there. We're going to go through some quick announcements before we start looking at the images, just let you know what's going on in the Swatches community and help you be able to jump in to some of the art challenges or other projects we have going on. So of course, number one, Anna is joining us again. And she's also going to be taking a look at the chat and trying to watch that. I generally don't read it all while the stream is going, but if you do have a question to me throughout the stream, just put swatches in your word, just like title it to swatches, and it will flag that in orange, and we'll know that that's directed at me. Also, the Swatches Discord is alive and well, and a lot of people are sharing a lot of information. It is actively being used on an hourly basis. So you can go out there, follow that address, and join the Swatches Art Club. There are channels for the art challenge and art sharing, resource sharing, among others. And the art club is also going. We've put out a new topic, or say we, Anna put together a new topic for the art club. If we want to give a quick outline of kind of what the topic is this week and what the art club is in general for any new viewers.
You're completely right. I put already a new topic, or I wrote everything down and put up some assignments. As a group in the art club, we decided though to postpone it 1 week because some people felt like they still need time to hop on the last assignments and the work we were doing there. So we decided to have a more of a bi-weekly change of subject.
Okay.
So, because many people felt like they're falling behind and they didn't have time because of work and other things and challenges and personal projects. So, I think it's a good pace for me too. So, we are going to change this up to an art club that goes like bi-weekly, and for huge themes and topics, probably 3 weeks even. I will always tell you on art club, and if I feel like the whole community needs a little bit more time, I will always give that time. So it's a group anyway. It's not like I'm having like a set pace and you have to follow. It's just we decide this together, these things. And so we are still on the form studies and the still lives, and from starting from the week after, so after our next stream that we are having here together, we will head over to the head and doing planes of the head and head studies and forms of the head and stuff like that. So it's gonna be really interesting and educative.
Guys, this is really good topics, and it's not, it's not sexy. It's not necessarily even the stuff that you put in your portfolio, but it is exactly the sort of work that you need to do in order to really improve. And this is what all artists, professionals have to put time into in order to reach that level. Yeah, I think the bi-weekly makes a lot of sense. I do think that's going to fit better in people's schedule, so I'm curious to see how that's going to work out. Number 4, we have the Group 1 concepts are next week. So we kicked off a new challenge last week when Group 1. We have two groups going at the same time. All right, Group 1, Group 2. So Group 1 will be next week. We'll be looking at their concepts for the One Punch Man Ancient Space Challenge. But we're going to change it up a little bit. That was a little slow to sell out, so evidently there wasn't a lot of interest in doing that one. So I've decided that we're actually going to have a different challenge topic for Group 2. So there'll still be two groups, they're just going to be two different topics for each one. So let me run through that. And also, just to let you know, the tickets for this other challenge, which will be the Group 2 challenge, will be going on sale tomorrow. 6 in the morning, 6 in the evening, there will be 12 tickets total. And I didn't really consult anybody, I just picked something that I thought would give people some creativity and may just be kind of fun to do, and that is the science versus myth. Design and illustrate a battle scene pitting a science fiction character against a character from myth. So choose two characters, one from a known science fiction property and the other from classic myth. And the characters could be in the science fiction realm, but not limited to the Terminator, Daleks from Doctor Who, the Borg from Star Trek, the Xenomorph from Aliens, Darth Vader, Boba Fett, RoboCop, Master Chief, Major Kusanagi. From Myth, you could have any known characters, again, but not limited to Hercules, Medusa, Cyclops, the Monkey King, Thor, Merlin, Paul Bunyan, the dragon, Dracula, the Wolfman, the Yeti, Baba Yaga, any of that. Just get two characters that you like, or I mean, you could pick two similar character powers, two completely different. And this is just really about kind of doing a splash art or just a scene for your portfolio. And this can actually be a pretty good portfolio piece because it shows that you can get something that people recognize and do it in a new, interesting way, and not just a repeat of, oh, I'm gonna draw another version of Darth Vader. I'm doing another Darth Vader portrait. Everybody's kind of seen that, but seeing like Darth Vader versus Medusa, I mean, I've never seen that before. You might be able to do something really cool with that. So yeah, it can be vertical or horizontal. You'll be given templates that you can use either one you want. And just some notes down there as far as your workflow. So yeah, tickets will be on sale tomorrow morning. They'll probably be again at the $25 level. And you get the two feedbacks over the two different live streams. That is inspiration. Oh yeah, inspiration page here. Just kind of showing battle scenes, not necessarily these characters, but just showing the battle scenes of what we're sort of looking at. Is two characters facing off against each other, sort of showing their power, and also usually a change of values and a change of colors for each one, like red and blue. And that's a really common thing with a lot of League of Legends. Again, like the warm versus cool here. And that you're close with one character and the other character is behind them, or you do the side-to-side thing. But I want to be fairly open on this one and let you guys, hey, if there's another character that I didn't list that you want to use, as long as it's something that is fairly known, like some completely obscure character that I won't be able to do any kind of feedback on. But as far as this challenge, would you have any idea what you would pick if you were going to do it, Anna?
I just thinking about which name it was. It was from Hellboy.
Mm.
I don't know whether he would fit the sea creature guy. What was his name? Abe? I don't know.
Oh, Abe Sapien?
Yeah, Abe Sapien. He was cool. Would he fit too into the sci-fi theme, or is it not sci-fi enough?
No, I'm fairly lax on this one, so yeah, I'd probably let it go if you had a good pair up. Sure.
Yeah. So I like that character a lot. I'm usually not the sci-fi type, you know that, but if it gets close to sci-fi, I'd probably pick him, and maybe also some sea from mythology with sea god or
Mm.
something connected to the sea, and
Yeah.
they're meeting or something. And
Yeah, or
The
you
other
could
one being
have
more aggressive and Abe being like, "Oh, hey, let's be friends."
right. Oh, you could get to really powerhouse like Poseidon, right? And Poseidon's massive, and he's got his trident, and he's got this tsunami behind him, but facing off on the land is Godzilla. I mean that would be kind of cool too. I could go for that. And Godzilla's powering up, and he's got like the lightning coming down and hitting his spikes and stuff. So have fun with it. We just want to see like a really fun kind of epic battle scene. Okay, heading back over. The Patreon project is been released. If somehow you missed your messages, patrons, the messages have all been sent out, and you have links to go download the new illustration process, videos, and PDFs. This is a lot of content. I put in a lot of hours to put this one together. And it's about 3.5 hours of video over part 1 and part 2. There's something like 55 pages of PDFs that shows you all the notes and examples throughout the video. And you got a really good deal on this one. It is going to be about 4 times more expensive in the store, just because of how much good content is in there. So you got a really good deal. But everybody else, it will go up sale on the store. But I want to get a little feedback from my patrons first to make sure I didn't make a mistake with the editing somewhere and I need to go fix something. I want to fix any kind of issues first before I put it in the store. I do see a flag over here with my name. Swatches, if I took part in this, how would I submit my work as I'm not on Twitter or Facebook? Through the Discord? If you did it as part of the challenge, then you get a link to a Dropbox folder with your content that you buy off the ticket, and then you just upload it to that Dropbox folder, and that's where I get a copy of the file. Okay, also, one-on-one hour mentorships still available, still have dates lined up that you can schedule that. I probably need to open some up for the end of the month, but you can go out to art-mentor.com. This is where you can get any questions related to art, the industry, motivation, inspiration addressed. It's you and me on a video chat, and we can open up Photoshop and we can problem solve an image that you're working on. We can talk about what you need to be focusing on for the next several months of your art education. Maybe you're trying to prep your portfolio and you just want some professional feedback about what can I do just to polish up some of my major pieces before I try to go get some work. Whatever that is, you let me know. We will address wherever you are with your art and go from there. And of course, please leave a like on the channel. I'll actually sit here for a couple of seconds just to give you a chance to put a like on this video. Very good. Now we will move on. Alright, I don't think we got all those submissions. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Alright, so we have 10 out of 12. That's pretty good. Somebody always gets sick or busy or something. But Anna, your name starts with A, so again, you're first up.
Yeah, I guess.
You sound enthused.
I'm a little bit frightened of your comments on it.
Okay, now you didn't write anything in, so let's start with, is there any particular topic that you want to talk about or address on the image?
So we already had a little chat before the stream started, so I'll make it quite short. So I had the most trouble with the muddiness of colors, with finding the right values for the shadow areas, and yeah, working with the silhouette and the readability of everything. Because there's so many elements also with tangents, visual tangents, and all these things. Yeah, so things I'm still working on is of course the background and the foreground. I didn't have much time because also my illness, sickness. So I'd like to know how to clean some things a little bit up to make them a little bit more good looking, to take out some muddiness. Any other tips you have for improving the background or the character design if you think it's too too much little things, it's not a good character design, you can let me know. Or I had also a different, like a dragon hat shaped shoulder plate, as I
Hmm.
didn't put it in. I felt like it's a little bit too much then, having also that and the pouch and everything. I
Yeah.
took out the weights because I couldn't find a good place for them without interfering with the arms and making things a little bit too heavy to load it. And yeah, I'm interested in what you can tell me about
Mhm.
this.
I think that's kind of a sign of maturity of an artist is the willingness to consider stripping back some of the elements off the character to say, all right, let's really get down to who this character is. Does he really need this extra thing to make him look or a certain way or fill out who he is? And I remember watching a video on God of War where they were designing Kratos, and they went through a lot of concepts. They knew that they just wanted this really kind of ferocious, and they originally had him with all these kind of accoutrements on him, and then they said, okay, no, slim it down, simplify it, let's simplify it. And they finally just simplified it down to where he had these kind of big, tattoo shapes on him, and he was gray, and he's got his two weapons. And that's pretty much the way he ended. And they're like, okay, this is it. If we add anything more to him here, we're just overcomplicating it. And this right here is kind of who he is. Like, he's not a lot of depth there. He's just a badass warrior. And so, oh no, I heard that it reminds me of them designing Kratos. So let's go through it. A couple of the notes that I've made actually address the points you were talking about. So turn them on. We'll go through them here just one at a time. In the background, I'd be thinking about adding some sort of clouds, a bit more atmospheric to break up some of the edges. All the mountains have basically the same sort of edge, so I would consider coming in here and just getting some sort of cloud shapes that it could be a medium in between the darkness of the, the mountain itself and the cloud area behind it. Also, we don't want to lower the opacity on this lightning. Lightning will always be white. So over here on this left side especially, we don't. It has to still remain white. The atmosphere is not really going to keep it darker. It might be that it has a cloud that sort of diffuses some of the light, but it's not going to overall kind of gray it out in that way. So we could just do that, and then the cloud would lighten up where that lightning is behind it. And this would just break up some of those shapes and make that feel like there are some clouds back there which are generating the lightning. And I think the lightning is kind of cool. That's nice. And then that would be those. Next up, design-wise, I'm a fan of a lot of this design. And I mentioned it to you earlier. I think the pouch is really good. The cloth has a really good feel to it, the way that it is sort of flowing, and I think it runs this really nice balance between being realistic, but it's not necessarily like that sort of photo accuracy. It's an illustrative realism, and it's working quite well, I think, for this image. So happy with that. The upper body here, this piece of fabric alone is like the one that sort of sticks with me the most. And so I would consider breaking that up instead of one piece that wraps all the way around him and then up over his shoulder. I would think about maybe subdividing that into a couple of different pieces. Like one piece does this, and then there's maybe a series of other pieces underneath there, or tighter wraps that come out from the other side and come around, and then there's some coming around from his back to get there. So that's probably the one that I would see about editing the most, or trying to find a slightly different pattern with that. Let's see, next up. Oh, on the background, the faces back here are... I don't have a problem with the faces, idea-wise, but faces are always an eye magnet. They grab our attention. Anything that looks humanoid, we look at it. And so we have to be a little more subtle in the way that we do them. Otherwise, it actually is slightly distracting. Like the one in the feathers back here, I think that we could probably just treat it a bit more like a silhouette, where it's just got enough value you can kind of make out the features, but you've got a lighter tone around it so that it's not making an entire trio of well-lit faces. And so that one's a little bit just more back in the haze, kind of like that. And then on the other ones, we want to just play down the contrast, just so the faces aren't quite as visible as catching. But the stone design of them, I like that. I think that's working well. I'm just kind of mute them down visually some. That, let's see, what was my other one? Oh yeah, on the tattoo, one of the things that I have noticed that either tattoo has to be super subtle, and where you rarely even notice that it's there, or you do fewer larger ones. So like a little loopy design like this, that design's fine, but that's never going to show up on a card. So if you do want some tattoos that show up on cards, it's better just to have like one nice big thick loop, and without any kind of little bits going along with it. And so you're thinking about fewer lines that are much thicker. Just because, you know, on a Magic card, it's 1.5 inches tall. So, yeah, what do you think about those ideas so far?
Yeah, so of course the faces are still photo bashed, so I
Mm-hmm.
just painted a little bit over it, and I considered having these a little bit less detail. It's a good hint
Yeah.
with the overall contrast for me, and also I like the thing what you changed with the clothes. And the tattoo makes sense to me. My thought behind that was this 1,000 dawns. I wanted to implement like he's having 1,000 of the sun symbols
Mm.
all over his body, so
Mm-hmm.
to have something with his name. But I think it looks cool with just one big loop, one big sign symbol on his chest. I will try that definitely. So,
Yeah.
oh, and for the lighting, I tuned it down because I felt like it's making everything too busy.
Mm-hmm.
And I would need it one side being more dark and the other side being more bright to oppose his bright and dark sides.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you say it's not disturbing much, I'd make it like that.
I don't think it's too much, but the other option here is if you want to have it back there and not be quite as distracting, let's go ahead and erase out a little bit of what I had just to show the example. If it's basically going to be white lightning, and but you don't want to use white, then use a super saturated other color. Like I'm going to use a cyan here, and it's considerably darker than white, but it's very saturated. And so it sort of allows the value to stay in the range that you want, but the vibrancy of the color helps it to stand out. And that would be sort of a medium option that you do see used occasionally in illustration when the need arises. Okay, other notes. Yeah, silhouette on him. Oh, I just felt like this is a super minor thing, but I glanced down here and saw it. I would expect some of this grass to cover up on his feet more.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, you hadn't worked with the
Definitely.
foreground very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
But I remember something my art teacher told me when I was in high school, which is always paint the feet as if they're slightly into the ground. And that makes it feel like they actually have weight rather than making it look like they're on top of the ground. Because if you do that, it almost makes it look like they're weightless. They're floating slightly.
Yeah.
I do like the decision of having some of this blue light coming through the back of the cloak on the bottom. That is the sort of thing that I would expect myself to do. Like, oh, I could have some light coming through there, and it could be nice and pretty and blue.
Yes, I think this is what I took away from you probably in all the time of mentoring.
And then I did a quick paint over of some of the face area. For example, some ideas. That was first thing I did here. I know you got a delay. I'm talking to you live, but you got a little delay on the
Yes.
watching the stream. But I use a overlay layer here
Ooh,
in order
yeah.
to kick up some of that golden color. And right now his face is just getting a little too washed out.
Ooh,
It's being
yeah.
treated as if the skin is gray, which it's behaving that way because it's taking on the color of whatever's lighting it very heavily.
Yeah.
So it looks like it almost doesn't have any of its own color. And by using the overlay, we can actually add a little of that warmth to the skin, because if you do have skin under a golden light, it's going to get quite golden. So that would be one of my first thoughts, is to just punch that up a little bit. And then a normal layer.
I thought I was already brave with the color, but it seems I wasn't.
I think you were very brave
I
with the
felt so
lighting.
brave.
I think the lighting is good.
Yeah.
But yeah, just we don't want to lose too much of that color. Well, you got the color actually quite well there on the side, along his obliques. You didn't carry the same amount of tone up to his
Yeah.
jaw area. And so next I would be considering doing a glaze. I think I glazed at 30%. Just a slight warmth along some of the rest of his skin, so that his skin
Okay.
isn't able to go to pure blue, because it does have
Yeah.
its own color. Now the white fabric can be blue because that's the color of the light, the
Yeah.
environment.
I
So we
already
just
did.
want to show
Yeah.
that separation between the white fabric can take on the color because it's white, but the skin can
Yeah.
tint but not become quite as blue.
Yeah.
I'm also adjusting this with the lighting that we have a light on light value pattern here at the head, where the side being lit with the lightning is light, then the value of the environment behind it is light, so that edge just kind of gets and so I'd be trying to change that by possibly slightly darkening the value of the background there, and then adding a really clear bright light from that lightning. Because generally lightning is, anything that's light is just like super bright,
Yeah.
or it's not being hit at all. And we kind of have a medium there right now that's sort of lit. So I'd be thinking maybe slightly that direction with it.
That's what I wanted to achieve, exactly how it looks now.
Yeah, I have a
Oh,
feeling
I
that's
failed
what.
so
Yeah.
hard. I was so far away from it. What I wanted
No,
to
you're actually
do.
quite close. I mean, you can block that in just a couple of minutes. Yeah.
Can you help with the muddiness of the trouser and foot area quickly if we don't
Oh,
have
the
the time?
trousers. Yeah, I did not do anything on that. Let's take a look. I'm gonna use a just rounded square brush here. Uh, the general tone looks like it works. You having the influence of the cool, the influence of the warm. I'm gonna be basically. I think they're too contrasty, so I
Yeah.
would be averaging them out a lot more and looking at the larger form and shading it according to the larger form. Might actually pop that up just a little bit more in there so I have some value to work with. The gold is going to be darker than the white fabric that's being backlit. Just value-wise. Have that. And then you have that core shadow through there. I think you've got it. And then I think anything on the lit side, just a rule of thumb, you want to play down any of the shadows in the lit areas and play down any of the light spots in the shadowed areas. And that's sort of where we were getting a problem there. We're having a bit too much darkness in the lit side and too much light in the dark side. Shapes-wise, about the fold pattern there, I would want to go look at some folds and see how that plays out. But I would just do that, and then back here, you're going to be running similar tones. This is all going to be fairly blue, because it's just being influenced by all that. And when any color is being lit by, and we'll actually have this in the Patreon reward, when any color is being lit by heavily tinted color of the opposing side, so in this case a gold being lit by a blue, then the color gets extra dark and shifts towards a desaturated kind of brown tone.
Yeah, I see.
So, and the gold down here and also be accentuating the curvature on some of these. I'm going to be getting these extra dark and then letting some of this blue tone, this lovely blue tone that you've got there. And I love that you're going with that pop of color. It's so nice.
Yeah. I really tried to be brave with this one. I was like, how would Clint do it? I tried.
I think a lot of it is working a little bit.
I am afraid of color.
So I have to have that curving down just so it doesn't confuse our brains.
Oh yeah.
So something in that line. We're just evening out some of it. I wouldn't want to override all of your folds there. I'm going to assume that you can come back and just add some minor differences to create some folds. And yeah. And probably getting this leg one and just darkening that slightly there. And so this other tone can
so much.
go up like this. And this is perhaps getting a little too dark for white fabric. I'll bring that up a notch. And same thing here. We want to add a little value change between this closer piece and the piece behind it. No, it's good stuff. Really, really good stuff there.
It looks so much cleaner now, exactly how I wanted it.
Good. No, you can definitely implement that. Like I said, you kind of press for time, just being sick and stuff, and your brain never works quite as well when you're when it's.
Well, even if I wasn't sick, I wouldn't have been able to do that. But now with your help, I'll try.
Curious about maybe some. I feel like perhaps the arm is getting a little blown out there at the top.
Yeah.
I'd see about bringing some darker tones in the middle of it. The edges can stay nice and bright, but I'd see about a little more of that transparent feel and
that's cool, yeah.
kind of doing that sort of thing.
I struggled with this a lot with the arm. I tried so many different things and had references and everything, but still was hard.
It is tricky. Drawing something that is in itself a light source. Fun but tricky. Okay, we got some other ones to look at. You know that you can shoot me a message later or something if we want to go over some particulars.
So cool. Thank you so much.
Yes, you will want a copy, I know, so I went ahead and saved it. Next up is Jonathan. because he put challenge at the beginning of his. Okay, any comments? Have you looked at the chat? Do we need to address anything?
Not since the questions about that you already answered earlier.
Okay. Jonathan says, due to time limitations, I had to focus on pushing through a concept submitted 2 weeks ago. Fortunately, I didn't have time to do the value and color variations. Also, background needs more love. Thank you for the challenge. It was great to do this guy. Do this one more time. You might remember me from the past as a 3D guy. Okay. You've had a chance to look at this. Did you want to kick it off, or would you like me to?
Yeah, I can, of course, start if you like to. Kind of skipped some, didn't you? Like alphabetically ordered wise. There was Christina, then Jonathan. Well, okay, let's go with Jonathan.
Well, he put challenge submission at the front, so it put alphabetically C.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's a trick, you see, guys.
Yeah, he's trying to jump the line. We see what you're doing, Jonathan.
Just put an A Maddow. A Dan. Oh, I misspelled my name. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, Jonathan. Here I have it. So this one is done completely in 3D, as far as I got it. Is that right? At least.
I think he might have done some minor paint and manipulation. But
Yeah.
the basis of all of it is 3D. But I can't tell he's done some painting in Photoshop work.
Yeah. So it's overall good composition still, as we already said earlier. He did some changes with the surroundings, that they are a little bit higher, the mountains, giving also a really good fantasy feel. I like that. And his facial expression is good. He's confident, and I like his overall design. I think that it's a little bit a loss to having changed this kind of lighting. He had before that very nice sunrise with lighting, with the lower body being in shadow and just the upper body being in light. Now he's lit overall completely in the same light, which is of course a thing you can do, but to me it looks a little bit flat and boring then. So it would have been more dynamic with a more focused light, like a sunlight that is coming over the top of a mountain. I like this idea before. The detail, probably because it's 3D, is to me super busy, and especially in the background where we don't need every leaf and stuff like that. So an overpaint over the details would have done this piece. Would have helped this piece a little bit more, to my opinion. In my opinion, and overall it feels a little bit stiff. So 3D is hard to control. You usually end up with something very static and stiff. So it's hard to do with only 3D. Maybe he can like push a little bit more when he paints over it. Overall, it's also the same sharpness everywhere. It's super sharp, all the parts. There's no even the background is super sharp, like the mountains far in the back are very sharp, and that again adds to that stiffness and to this it's not very dynamic this way. So these are the points that I'd push further in this piece.
I think those are good observations. You know, the change of the lighting here, I don't know how that really improved much. I did like the shadow from earlier version. I'm gonna see about sort of mocking that in. And that way it actually draws your attention up to the top of the character. Because right now, basically everything is even. Remember that you tell the viewer what is important by what you put the light on. And if you put the light everywhere on the character, you're saying that everything is equally as important. And generally that is the case. Drop that down a little bit. Layer. Grab a little bit of this. But you hit on it, which is inherently it has a lot of just the problems of 3D, and
Yeah, mainly.
I have no problem with somebody using 3D as a basis for an illustration. There's a lot of great information, like just the little example down here in the bottom right shows that to be true. However, this is also an MTG challenge, and this doesn't look like MTG, because MTG doesn't do 3D models, or in very small degree. This looks like, generally speaking, just a 3D render. I know that you did some painting stuff on it, but it doesn't look like an illustration. So
he's also in chat. Maybe we can ask him what he's heading for. Like, does he want to be a 3D artist, or does he want to become a illustrator?
well, I mean, and you can ask him if you want, but it really doesn't matter because this was an illustration challenge.
Yes, of course, but just for us to know what tips we can give.
Yeah. So we can talk. A lot of the stuff we're talking about, I mean, it's capable of being done in 3D. It just, you've got to be able to get out of the box of it, out of the normal 3D little box. You've got to be able to look at this and then draw over it the sort of change that you want. And you have to be able to see this as a guide for some information. But right now, you're letting the image direction be set by your 3D model instead of letting the 3D model be set by your image direction. And that can be really difficult, but that's what has to be done. So here's just a quick lighting change there that throws your attention back up to the face. Now, some of the other notes I had. If you were to push this further into more of a illustration, some of the stuff that you'd have to do, and you kind of mentioned it, is busyness. The gold pattern, I mean, the gold pattern has to go, I'm sorry, is because it's just random. It's just random. It's the same thing everywhere. His arm has it, every piece of fabric has it, his skin has it. It doesn't tell us anything about the character. It doesn't tell us anything about the culture. There is no purpose to it. If you could use it to make some sort of design that tells us more about his culture or his past or his personality, that's one thing. Or if you could do it in order to highlight different shapes on the body, that's one thing. But just using a random moldy design across the whole thing, you might as well just not even have it. It's also the sort of thing that's not going to show up in the least on a little viewing on a card. So we have to be thinking about that as well. So that would be some. So the other things I was looking at is just changing some of the shapes and the way that it's designed so that it is more illustrative and less 3D. I think the design here is the waist belts are just too low. And it's making his torso feel just really long and thin. And we want to play up a little more of this V shape on the character. Make him feel a little more heroic. And doing this sort of thing. Let's just actually grab all of this. See about moving it up a bit. I think automatically that feels a lot better.
He's in chat and he answered he wants to be more of an illustrator, but he also wants to push his 3D to 2D workflow.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we could give him some tips on that also. So.
Well, I would say you probably don't even need to take the 3D as far as you did.
Yeah.
You could probably go a little past what you had there on the bottom right, but then you need to be doing your value studies and color studies. Oh yeah, I had a note to mention that. You said, I didn't have time to do the value and color studies.
But there's so much detail.
Yeah, I don't buy it.
Yeah,
As your art
that's
teacher,
the problem.
I'm calling you on that one. That is not true. You had
Yeah.
time. You just spent it on doing a lot of things that you didn't need to put your time into. You spent it putting lots of little gold stuff over everything. You spent it playing around with the shapes of the trees and the rocks in the background. You spent it playing around with detailing, strands in his hair. Uh, you put it into stuff, and it would have been better had you put it into these rather than trying to put it into all this little stuff. But that's also just something that you learn over time as to where to put your time and what your workflow is. So let's not, in the future, if you want to do illustration, you probably don't want to push the 3D as far, because it looks like you let yourself be controlled by it too much. So here, I'm looking at, we move that up, it feels like he's a little broader in the shoulder. We get more of this V shape now. And then we get more of this cloth that can come out. And we're playing up these shapes so they're bigger, they're more interesting. And even the cloth in the background here, we can play that up and get that being a bit wider there. And some of the stuff back up here, each one of these is about the same. And there's not really much overlapping with any of them, and they're all about the same size. So what if some of them were significantly larger? What if this was just one big one? And we can even have it going off the screen. I mean, I don't care. Going off here, and then this back one could be coming down behind him. And the golden arm, again, illustrative wise, this needs to be reading more as the gold. We can see how these things could be pushed. Same thing with this hair. This is more of just normal hair. It's not really a big splay of hair. We could be pushing that further, and maybe he has like a long bit there on the bottom, but then he has kind of the top piece that you had there in the bun. And so now we've got a bigger shape there. We're just trying to push it all. Same thing with his pants. Right, we're going to figure out what that actual shape is. That the gold obviously looks very gold, and I like that. Now, and that's one of those things that it would give you the right tones. It would feel very metallic, but again, the pattern is completely random. It's just this sort of watery, bumpy texture. And this is where we could tell, again, a lot about the character, the culture. What kind of patterns does it have on it? Does it look Asian? Does it have figures on it? Is it symbolic in some way? These are opportunities for us as illustrators to tell more about the character. And a big thing that we want to do here is to go from generic to specific. We don't want just a generic armband, a generic, metal piece there around his neck. We want a specific one. We want to specify what it is, what shape it is, where it's, where it was made, kind of a bit about it, what it stands for, all that sort of stuff. So think about generic to specific or common to unique. Yeah. Okay, that's my notes here. Anything you want to add before we move on, Anna?
Yeah, just about that processed workflow thing. I don't, it's just my personal opinion, but in Jonathan's case, I'd say not trying to push the 3D so much as a first base for your paintings, because I felt like he might be missing some of the fundamentals, and because he's a little bit afraid of doing it by himself, he does it in 3D where he can turn things around and don't have to think about what does this look from this angle and this from
Mm-hmm.
that, and if I put up the lighting, where's the reflection? The program does it for you, and the thing is, yeah, the program gives you a lot of good information often, but it's also really generic and stiff, and often even the computer programs don't do it right. And sometimes even artistic license with a little bit of mm, departing from the 100% what would be real. is sometimes better than what the computer generates for you. So
Yes.
um, I just recommend go as far as you have for the sketch phase, the figurine that we see in the bottom right, and then paint from there everything. And what you don't know how to paint, don't try to get it from the 3D program, but go study it and understand it and paint it from there. Even if your art might look worse than it is looking now, because you now have no help from the program, don't be afraid of that. I
Yeah.
completely understand. My very first commission I had with a company, I got the 3D models and everything, and I couldn't even move them around. So I ended up posing these models and painting over them, and in the end I feel like it didn't look good. I was too afraid because I didn't know, oh, how is the shoulder armor look in an angle when he puts his arm up and I'm behind him and the light coming from the right, what will it look like? And but this was the problem. I didn't know, or still I'm working on it. Not that I know it now, but I didn't know the fundamentals, and I didn't challenge myself, or I didn't study it properly. And I think you might have the same problem as me at that point, where you cling so tightly to that 3D program and hope it solves the problems for
Yeah.
you, but it gives you just a couple of new problems that are hard to solve because you're sticking so close to the model. So I just
The
suggest for the future, of course, get for a pose. Yeah, you can use a 3D model, but maybe work from photo reference and try to paint and sketch everything on your own from
mhm.
the beginning.
Yeah, not necessarily trying to use the 3D model to paint over, but using that as the guide just to help give you some information, and then you go draw it from scratch, using it as a reference like you would any other photo. Uh, you're right, Anna.
Yeah,
The 3D program is a tool, and what it gives you will always be maxed out based on you. It will never be able to give you information that goes beyond your understanding of how to lay out or that you need to know that it's there. Like you weren't thinking about how these form two-dimensional shapes and how we need certain shapes from this for it to be more dynamic from this angle. And the program doesn't know that. And so it's never going to give you that answer. Um, it will always be limited by your knowledge, especially your knowledge of the fundamentals. And so be careful of over relying on it. Okay, well, we got too many to go through. Let's wrap it up there. Christina is up next. Christina says this one was very much out of my league. I can't think of a good question to ask because I struggled with everything. Be more spam calls. That was number 5 today.
Christina's piece. You just see she did not just use a, I don't know, a base and left it like it is. She's really
Mm-hmm.
trying to understand what's there, and you see that she's tried to implement all the critique we gave
Yeah.
her. And even if you say it's out of your league, I think you ended up with a very beautiful piece. It's
Mm-hmm.
very clean, and you have a good lighting on it, and the proportions are good. Of course, there's always stuff to be improved, but you really should be really happy and confident with, because this is what you did. This is where you came now. This to this point, and I think that, yeah, you struggled with everything, but it means you learned from every part of this painting something else.
Yes.
You learn something new about clothes, probably, about faces, about lighting, about poses, about composition. You learn something from that. And I think that's the most valuable thing we can take from these challenges. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking the
So,
same thing. Uh, Even if you struggle with a piece, that's okay. I mean, I applaud the fact that you went and grabbed something that was what you knew to be over your limit and went for it anyway. Because usually that's where you do learn a lot of stuff. And like Anna mentioned, there's a lot of things that's going on very well here. And obviously you were paying attention in the last feedback and you try to implement that. You have changed the horizon. I think the tones in the background are working really well, especially with all the mountains back there. A lot better sense of the lighting on the character. Now we got better sense of folds across it. So on these sort of projects, you're getting what you should. That is the result and the end of I'm gonna have this really finished piece that I'm very happy with. Isn't necessarily the goal. The goal is I need to learn and improve through this process, and I think you're doing that. So I consider this successful. But we also want to talk about pushing the image forwards. If you're going to put some more time into it, what do we want to do? I'm going to say, let's make sure the anatomy. Let's watch some of the things on the anatomy and rendering of the character and the body, and then that's going to be base before you get to let's talk about all the color and the shading and stuff. So I made some lines here. I got the Lee character that you were basing the pose on, and I expanded him up to being about the same size. And these models, if you're just joining and you don't know, you're not familiar with these are from Figurosity, and you can just move them around in your browser and take a look
Pro,
at them.
as you recommended. You see, she got the naked version.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true because you only
She
have the
spent money
clothed
for it.
version and the free viewing. But you can pay a little bit and get the pro version, and then it has the muscle and the naked and the flat form, I think, like the gray form. And I was looking at the two of these, and we got some couple of little things off on the anatomy, particularly on the head. So I did want to talk about just the head for a minute, and so we're going to pull up to that and that because that's basically the soul of the character. And I put some lines in here where I was looking at difference. Some things that I want to put your attention to is the alignment of the eyebrows. Like this eyebrow here on the right side in particular is running actually to the left of the eyeball. And at this angle, the eyebrow is going to be starting over here. We have to look at the angle of the head. The eyebrow is going to start there for this side. The eyebrow is going to start about here for this side. And so we need to see that. That one was pretty close. But that same angle also needs to be here. We're going to see that this one comes up and then drops down. And a lot of that eyebrow is actually hidden around the other side of the eyebrow arch there. And then past that, we're also having to look at this angle. The chin actually looks a bit larger than normal. So I'm thinking that probably need to add a bit more chin here, get a bit more of this shape going on. We can also see the sort of form that the jaw is making there. And we have a much steeper, simpler jaw that's very slim. Here we're looking at that rounding a little bit and then dropping the base of that jaw down a lot more before it comes up to the ear. And the ear is much more flat to us. I mean, you know, kind of sideways to us. We actually want to angle that back so it's not so flat to us. Go. And also looking at his head, like if we imagine where his skull is there, and his skull has to be falling underneath that hair in a fashion something like this. And I think we're just getting slightly the skull shape off is perhaps a little big and a little heavy on the back. That's kind of where I'm thinking the skull would actually be running along there. And also looking at the space between the eyes. Now this is really small stuff, but it's stuff that's, you know, worth going over and worth noting because you're going to be drawing faces a lot as an illustrator. So, you know, make sure we're getting super accurate on that stuff. And I think we're not getting quite enough space between those eyes, feel like there's a little more here. So let's move maybe this eye over slightly, or I think this guy just needs to be moved over slightly. I mean, looking at that. Next up, I'd be looking at the tones of the skin. The skin is running a very matte feeling to it. It more looks like something that's painted a flesh tone. And it's not having the value change here that we really need in order to get more of the feeling of skin. So say that we're grabbing a tone that's a little brighter there, and we're looking for angles that be catching a little more light. So in this light area, we need to have another level of brightness. And keep the skin from feeling quite so dull. It's going to have a little more sheen to it than what you have there. I'd be pushing up some of that, and that would keep it, yeah, from looking kind of painted. This is the sort of thing that can work as a mock-in for a tattoo, but it feels flat because we know that it's not rounding around the form. It doesn't feel like it's contouring to actual volume of the tattoo. This is why a lot of times that's not the best way to do. You can put it in there as a guide, but when you go to actually illustrate it, you need to draw it and make sure that it's following the form. So in this case, I'd probably put in some guidelines that have this going on, guidelines that have contour lines, so that I know exactly the sort of form I'm wrapping around. And I'm drawing this stuff so that it will map to that and bend around the forms correctly. Okay, other things I was taking a look at were just mainly looking at the drawing, not so much on the lighting and colors. Other things I was looking at in the form is a little change here to the arm and looking at the shapes of the arm. This model is actually pretty good, but it's not mimicking the muscles in the neck quite right. And that if I put my neck over here, this muscle is going to bunch up and get bigger right there because it has less space to fill. And this one's going to stretch out. And we don't get that quite so much on that model. But this is going to lengthen out on that side, and then it's going to get bigger on that side as it bunches up. Essentially, it's the same thing as your bicep, right? Lengthen it out, it stays thin, but if you limit the distance between there, it gets bigger, even if you're not flexing. And so we have that. The shoulder muscle getting a little bigger there. And then looking at the volumes. Remember, we're just looking at this is a cylinder. And this is basically a split between a cylinder and a cone because it stays big on that end, but it's smaller on this end. Then you have the top of, almost like the top of a little sphere there. Before you run into that, and you have that angle change right there. And we want to accent that, try to bring those forms out. Also looking at how this aligns with the head. The hands were just a little low for there. And then on the knee felt like it was maybe reaching a little too far out, or it was a little flat to us. I would consider trying to turn it to us slightly more, which is what I brought sketched in. And the fabric is something that I would take a little license with in order to keep it from looking like it's just kind of tight to him, and make it a bit more mystical where it sort of floats around him like this. Then it's twisting as it's going around him. That's just an illustrative sort of thing. With the lighting on the arm doesn't read real well on a small, so I would be thinking about letting that brighten up in tone and making that feel a bit more like a light source. And it could get brighter, maybe along the tips of the fingers so the hand shape shows up, and then more along the edges as well. And we could use that again as a light source for this other area. We even have some light on here. keep those from getting too dark there, right along this. Yeah. I do like some of the tones in the background. You keep them more muted. You keep a lot of the warm tones out of it. I think that's a good call. But this tone up here just needs to be darkened down a little bit. It's a little distracting being at that value. So I'm going to just say tone that down a bit. So those were my major thoughts. Just trying to give Christina some stuff to focus on moving forwards. Did you want to add anything to that, Anna?
Well, you covered most of my points, and I feel like she has a lot to digest already.
Yeah.
So I think maybe one more thing, one more little thing is with the clothes flowing in different directions. I was a little bit thinking whether we could change that, maybe that they're more going into the same direction, or make them look like they have just been kicked up by the knee, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. So, but at the moment,
That's
it
an
looks
idea.
like the wind coming from different directions. So, but I have some little things, but I think the main issues are really the anatomy and yes, some form
Mm.
understanding, and I think she should train that in the future.
Yeah.
And if you like to, you can join our art club. We will be going over this 3D, thinking in 3D a lot in the upcoming weeks, and do tracings and form analysis. We already started with the still life. Basically, it's also form analysis and tracing. And if you like to hop on the art club wagon and study this with us.
Okay, we'll move on to Dan Robinette.
Mhm.
And he
Oh,
wrote some
Dan.
stuff down here, but he sent me a message and said, "Oh, actually, that's from the first week. I just forgot to change it, so we won't read it. We already know what it says from the other week." Dan,
Wow.
excellent, man. It's beautiful. I'm gonna pull in here a little bit so viewers
Yeah.
can pick up on some of the details here. What a clean, well thought out image. You ought to be proud of this one. Really nice.
Yeah. Let's go to the next.
Uh,
No,
a
just
lot
fun.
of good stuff going on here.
I found something. Yeah.
But of course, there's always things to improve. So we'll try to pick out a couple of things for you. But I
Yeah.
just want to be clear, like, guys, this is a really good piece, and I think that this and for a lot of properties, this would be printable, and this is definitely professional level.
Yeah.
But you know, what could we improve? Did you have you said you saw something or would recommend something, Anna?
Oh, I looked really closely. I tried to find something nitpicky, I can say.
Mm-hmm.
So, with a lot of zooming in, I found some little things.
All right, let's hear
um,
it.
so, one thing is the I don't know what makes this impression to me. It might be edges, it might be the lighting, and that is especially the foot he's standing on seems a little bit flat overall to me.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because it's all one value. And I'm also not sure whether his how to say his lower leg fits the angle of his foot. So maybe this is because I don't see the 3D form well in
Okay.
this leg. Mm, the other thing is I like the sharpness in the painting. I just feel like we don't need it everywhere. I see often in professional art that people get a lot of more soft and loose edges where there is no focal point. Maybe we could in the lower around his this standing foot and the pillar he's standing on loosen some edges a little bit. He looks a little bit cut out at some points. So just slightly, like really not much, but maybe this could push it even a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
Having some more detail on the pillar, it looks good, but I feel like there could be like moss growing or just a little bit more, making it a little bit more organic.
Yeah.
It feels a little bit boring. I think there could be a little bit, a tiny detail could be there. Um, yeah, and the arm transition from his ethereal arm to the upper body, I felt like we could have there something better. I feel like it looks a little bit like it's tied like with an invisible kind of string or something, and like sort together. So something like mm, like a sausage at the end, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like when you have this. I feel like there could be a little bit better transition between the upper body and the ethereal arm.
Okay.
Yeah, mm, that's it. I think I didn't find anything. Let's see
Uh,
what Clint found.
I did think that the pillar might need a little more love. I see a texture on there, and that could be good to get you started. Well, maybe just go in with some brush strokes and and give some unevenness to it. I would be thinking about doing maybe the fact that there's a few different little levels or kind of thicknesses to it. Right, they break off in different thicknesses. Like maybe this one sets down a little bit lower. Right, it's kind of like this sort of thing, and I just keep it from being quite so monotone with the same sort of thing all the way around, and just break it up with some brush strokes rather than just the same tone everywhere. That's kind of small. This is also an issue here. One of the biggest things I think making this feel flat is that we have several of these that are just going straight across instead of letting us look down on them more. And I would accentuate the curvature on some of these bands. And that really should help give a better sense of volume. And it's not a particularly difficult change. I might do it here in seconds. So I do that, and then consider doing a little fill light. I'm gonna try that here and just run a exposure. Put a and I'm gonna inverse that and just use it through a mask. So I could put a little fill light on this side, and I would also put it on this because the stone is getting basically black. We don't really need it black. And it's okay if the top of this gets bright as well. Because at this level, that could be picking up some angular reflection. So that's fine. Let that pop up. And we're just letting that get a little darker on the edges. Again, trying to accentuate the cylindrical form. Maybe you'll be able to use that here as well. Keeping some of this stuff in the shadow, but just slightly brightening some of that shadow there. Some small stuff. Some other notes. Okay, yeah, we got a repeat of the angles over here. That did catch me a little bit. I guess I could leave this on and just talk through it. So these fabric pieces all look like they're just hanging at the exact same angle. Could be a better option to twist them around so that they a little more random as far as their angling. So I would consider that. We already looked at the little fill light here just to help bring out that cylindrical form. Oh, on this one, this is one that I may consider trying to do a bit more of a smooth gradient. Make this feel more rounded instead of just a little edge light. And you could do, let it basically go from dark to light as it sort of goes around. Like that. And then this fabric, I would personally get a little more out of it. Maybe let it twist kind of inside itself there. And the top part of that fabric could be catching some light, and then we would see like the underside of it as it goes back that way. It would just be a little more interesting, have a little more motion than what we have so far. Do that sort of thing with it. I do like the overall design. I think it's got enough going on that you can look at it for a bit, but it's not overly busy. You've balanced things really well with it. The face is especially nicely rendered. I do think the having a little extra tone basically on the top of some of these back guys could be nice. Just picking out kind of one other tone. So the guys back here, you have a little tone with the rocks and the vegetation, but we could perhaps have a kind of a top light thing where you're just bringing out some of the top edges of these guys and make them feel like they have a sense of volume. And that wouldn't take very long either, but it would really go a ways to making it feel more like a volume rather than just a 2D kind of background shape. We're getting to nitpicky things. I would probably move this over, let that move over a little bit because I don't need those pushing, and letting that go on that side. It breaks out of that edge there and not be all the way inside of there. And change silhouette of this guy just a little bit. This felt a little odd that it just disappears right there. I would consider letting it kind of go halftone a little bit, so it fades out a little more gradually. Seems like it got lost very, very fast. So I'd be fading those out slightly more. Goes up there. Kind of on that line. The shadow tone here is getting kind of flat, so I would be thinking of adding a bit more of that background tone. And with the angular, I want to say angle occlusion, Fresnel effect, also known as, picking up some of this. The more something is similar to the angle of your view, the more that it becomes mirror-like. So that's why we could get a good deal of these cooler tones inside of the head here, because this is another case where it's getting to be a little too flat. And you've got some there on the neck, but I think we would get it elsewhere as well. I might just pop that ear up a little bit, because the light coming through there would pop it up some, or at least I'd like to play that it would. A little color difference in there to change it up. And we can actually get a pretty good sheen on the side of a bald man's head. You got light behind it, so that edge could actually soften out pretty good right there. Look at that. Still like two tones back there. Oh yeah, overall just a really, really nice piece. Consider breaking up your waterfalls some, where we don't necessarily just have one waterfall, one waterfall, one waterfall, one waterfall, like that. We could offset them if you had maybe two kind of doing this. Then consider like they get pushed over, and then they come down here, and then wherever they hit something, we're going to have, oh, it's not giving me custody. It's going to have a spray come up. Wherever that sort of comes down in here, it's going to be a spray coming out from it. So that's probably going to get lighter there. We're going to get it a little darker on this edge. And the spray will come out. And then maybe it comes down to this point and then it hits another rock, or there's a rock sort of jutting out. We're just trying to keep it from being that kind of straight, unbroken line. And this way, or maybe this one comes down and then it breaks into two, right? So that one sort of hits here, and then it breaks into this one, and they sort of combine back together over here. We're just trying to make it a little less Oh yeah, with the arm. Yeah, it's almost like the pinched effect. It's like he lost his arm, and then the skin regrew, but then his magic arm is just coming out straight from there. I would consider just trying to blend the two of them to keep it from being odd. Like maybe the glow, it blends in, and maybe like even the top of the shoulder is still kind of skin up there. Working that a little bit, or once it attaches, some of the glow continues throughout the skin, like it kind of branches off in this sort of vein pattern. That could work as well. Maybe even show like some of the veins coming up through this area that's powering up through there as well. Yeah.
It's again the Clinkily magic going on here. This time I really thought, okay, what is he gonna do with this painting? There is no way he can improve. I was so sure, like he will be struggling with this one, and he's like, it's totally easy. Go look here and there, and then it looks even better.
I've been studying, man. What do you think? I'm busy learning.
I really thought like this time you're gonna be like, okay, there's not much we can do. You're pro. Have a nice day. See you later. But no, he finds always stuff. He always improves things. Amazing, Clint. You are amazing.
Well,
look at this.
It's a beautiful piece to work off of. I mean, I've said it before on a lot of this stuff. All the hard work's already been done. I'm just coming in here and doing like little finessey stuff to it. So the same sort of effect you're going to have at the side of the head, where it's picking up that sheen. I think you're probably going to have it on the side of the arm here too. And you had it a little bit. I would just lean into that some more, and that would be good. And the gold there too could be picking up a good amount of the sheen from the light back in there. So gold in the lit, anywhere that's kind of getting a bit of light, is probably going to be quite bright, but anytime that it gets in the shadow, it may be even actually darker. Depends kind of how you're running with it. Yeah, beautiful scene. Definitely, Dan. I'd recommend just implementing a couple of these little things. I doubt it would even take you very long at all. But yeah, put it in your portfolio, dude. It may be even one that you should consider looking for a way to license it. There may be a game out there, a book, something of that kind that would be willing to give you some decent money in order to make use of this.
Yep.
Okay, next up we have Maddow. Hey guys, completely changed my illustration after the concept stream. Focused on the character and not so much the environment. And to simplify it, maybe too much, I got a hard time balancing the environment detail and the character. Maybe the environment need more love, things. I don't have an issue with you changing your design if you looked at it and thought, oh, I really would be better if I switched to the different pose and angle and stuff. Doesn't matter to me at all, but just a note for other people, if you are working on a professional job and you decide to do that, it may even be okay with them. Just shoot them a note and just say, hey, I've been working this direction that I sent you the concept, and I don't think that it's going to be able to reach the level that we need for this project, but I do think I found another variation that would. So here's a sketch letting you know the direction that I'm going with. If you're not okay with this, let me know and I'll see what other option we have. So just letting you know, if you're in a professional realm, you can do that. You don't necessarily need to do that for me. You can change your mind and submit a different final. That's fine. So it was just reminding me, because I've had that come up before, where I ended up changing the direction from the sketch to the final and just letting them know, hey, I ran into a wall with this idea and I don't think it's going to work. Yeah, I'm liking this. I think this overall has a really good vibe. The pose is probably better than what we had the first time. You've got a good sense of motion. The light trail from the hand is kind of cool. But yeah, the values, I think maybe there's a little value stuff going on. The background is lean. I don't know that that's a biggest problem though. If the character's carrying a lot of it. When you looked at this, what was some thoughts or ideas that you had on this?
Yeah, so I think he was good in changing the composition. I think this is much more fitting the description and making more use of the space and having a good angle and a good pose. I think that's definitely an improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I see some proportion problems, especially with the arms. They're super short in comparison to the very long legs. There is some foreshortening, yes. We are at the height of the legs, but it wouldn't be that huge of foreshortening between like legs and arms. So some proportions and anatomical issues that I think can be fixed quite easily with moving stuff a little bit around. I felt his face is a little bit flat and not rounded. I don't know where this impression comes from because his mouth is so wide and not rounded. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the rendering overall. It's really nice and clean. I just feel like the metal. It looks really metal. It's a good thing, but it is so dominant and how to say that in English? It's so strong and
Yeah.
also so greenish, yellowish, which can be fit for gold. But if you look at Arjani's gold armor, it has a much more subtle and soft impression, and here I feel like it's like pasted on top of everything else, and it doesn't work well with especially with the top part. The lower is okay, like on these ropes and stuff. I think that works, but the one on the top where it's getting greener and greener and greener, I feel like it's just too. Yeah, it's not working well with the rest together. I feel like it's cut out or something. And yeah, in general, super soft rendering, maybe adding some textures here and there for making different materials would be good. Um, and the knot does not make any sense. So this it wouldn't a knot would not look like that. I think a
Oh, you're a
reference
knot
would
expert
be.
now, are you, huh?
No, that's not.
Oh,
I painted also a robe like that on
you
my
can tell us that you
character,
were a pirate and you
and
worked on
I
that
looked
ship.
up a
Yeah.
couple of knots out there is made with this kind of robe, and none looked like that.
None of
So
them, really?
none of them looked like that.
Hmm.
So it maybe I'm wrong because Clint is now again being mean to me, but
No, I'm
I
sort of like
feel
him. I
like
just sort of usually make up knots and I don't even really I don't look at them up.
you don't look at them. Yeah,
Not
maybe because you did
always.
not work on any knots this time, so you didn't do the challenge. I just did some knots. That's why I like the idea with the magic on coming from his other hand. I
Yeah,
think it's cool.
I think that's
I
nice.
feel like his ethereal arm could need some more work. It's a little bit. There's something missing. I don't get the ethereal much from it. It's a bit fuzzy and yeah, I think we could improve it a little bit, the arm. Yeah, but in general, like really clean and nice work and good angle and all, and the lighting with the soft light coming from the back. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just some nitpicky things from me. Yep, that's it.
Yeah, so I've just been kind of sketching along on some things that were catching my attention while you were going over yours, and the ethereal arm is not quite enough pop on it, and I was thinking about if we just glazed it all over with kind of a warm yellow, I think that's going to make it stand out a lot better. So I'd be looking at maybe that sort of change. And I'm also looking at opportunities to switch maybe some of the non-important areas to being a bit more silhouette and keeping more of the lit stuff there around him. And you have that kind of going on this, and I think that's good because we don't really need light there, but I'd actually just do the same thing over here with this cloth as well. Otherwise, we have to get this cloth really light, and that's possible too. But we averagely need to get all of this cloth lighter. We're letting too much of it get into too dark of a shadow. And all of it sort of needs to be treated as being slightly lighter in order to stand out from the background. Or we need to allow some of it get darker and brighten a bit of the background there. The body does feel like maybe it's I think this leg over here just might be pushing it a bit too far. Like his knee, like the length of his femur on that right leg, on his right leg, would have to be really long. I think perhaps it's slightly off there. So I'll double check your pose, but that seems correct. I had some notes. I would want to see if you're not going to be playing up big mountains in the background, which you could add, and we could add some down here, and we have another back here, mountain right here. This. Use guy. And if you want some of it catching light, we can do that. Dark. So you could throw some in there if you wanted to. Otherwise, we need to play up a little more interesting stuff with the clouds. I would go look at some photos of clouds, like the background there on the Black Panther. Something a bit more like that. I mean, you can use the colors that you have, but just a little more definitive shapes. The clouds right now are just very kind of somebody's idea of a cloud. It doesn't feel too specific. And it's not too interesting. So see if we can develop those a little more if you're not going to put big mountains in. I don't think you necessarily need big mountains. Now the bottom, this does bother me a little bit, and that is we have an viewpoint change. Here we are establishing with an ocean or sea of some kind that this is the horizon line, absolutely. And so, therefore, we are looking down on anything lower than that. Except for the fact that we are looking up at the edge of this rock. So, we got a mix-up of perspective there. Either we need to see the top of this rock, or the horizon is lower than the edge of that rock. One or the other. But it would be very weird shape for the rock that we could not see the top of it with it lower than the horizon line. So let's adjust that. I had the other ones in there. what else was I looking at? The knot, yeah, Anna's right. Go take a look in the knot. And also the ropes themselves, we want to be a little more attentive to how the braids, we call them braids? Individual pieces of rope in a rope, how they are working. Looks like you're kind of guessing at that there. So make sure that you're still remembering as a unit, this is cylindrical. And so these need to be going around them in a consistent manner. Then it just gets that little bend up at the top there. Then it gets the extra twist at the bottom. So every one of these is a bit of an S curve. And this stays about the same, but you see more of a twist there on either end. And we want to mimic that, because here this is where you need to get a reference for it, because we have this curving in every different direction. And so this one's curving down, but yet we're looking up at it. It's really kind of odd. So put a little time into that and look at that. Overall, I think the design works really well. The metal little extra pieces that kind of give a gleam. It's a really interesting design for the tattoo. With the big kind of fan shapes coming off of one side of the pec, and there's a fly trying to run into my face. So those are cool. The metal plate's looking very metallic. I put a little glaze over it to tone it down there. Like you were mentioning, it's just getting too green for a scene that is lit by blue light and violet light. You're not going to have that pure of yellow and green under these lighting conditions. So if we just muted it down a little bit, it would help and make it a little more believable. Okay.
Do I have a dirty mind when I say that the middle piece is not the best decision for the design?
The middle piece, the long centered piece?
Yeah. With some round armor on each side of it. Maybe I'm just having a dirty mind, I don't know.
I really doubt that's not the case. Even if you just made it if that is an issue, then you make it a series. Then you have a couple more that are also coming off, so it's not a standalone. You kind of do it that sort of way, but I think maybe you're just especially sensitive to such things. This cloth seems like it's just brown. I would expect it to be more white and be a bit more like the other tones you have here, not the rope. So let's see about doing just some bigger bands of ties there. These fingers I would clarify more, and either let the fingers get glowy and just say, hey, he can light up the tips of these fingers like his other magic hand, and so they can show up that way. Or we get more of a silhouette that is clearer from those fingers. Then we can do just a glow around them, right? And we kind of have the glow coming between them and around the fingers there. And so it's this sort of aura around the fingers that is trailing off. You can do that and get a little of the kind of the subsurface tones where that's making that skin sort of glow on the inside because it's got light source. A little more like that. Yeah. Okay, enough feedback. I think we have given Maddow enough to keep him busy for a while. And Michaela is up. This fly is just really going after it. Wow. Hey.
Who? Not Nito? Not Nicole? Oh, I don't have that.
Oh, yeah. They didn't get it in on time. There was a technical problem, and so they sent it to me just with Discord. So I will give some of my comments first, and you can be looking at it. And if you see something during the time, then we will toss them in there.
Okay.
Okay, so it says magic effects are now on my must-learn list. Yeah, good stuff to learn. I still have layers for everything, so no need to hold back. The material paint over you did was super inspiring. Good, good. Yeah, it's looking really well. We talked about rendering the gold last time. And when will your materials course be available on Gumroad? Materials course, right now the goal is basically have it done by the end of the year. I don't have a date on it. Yeah, that's sort of what I'm going with right now because it's still a lot of work. And even if I had nothing else to work on, it would still probably take a couple of months. So I'm just trying to do a good job and aim for like the end of the year. So on this, this is really, really pulling together to be a nice piece. I'm enjoying this, and you've listened to a lot of the feedback. You've gone in. I'm just sort of trying to remember what we talked about last time. We talked about adding in some different tones there to the skin because the skin was basically one tone. Talked about pulling in some of the cooler tones. I like that. You got that warm and cool. The skin feels very skin-like. And we talked about getting some cloth reference to really get that cloth to be moving more naturally and more interesting. That's coming off well. We talked about rendering the gold and doubling up the warmth on any part of the gold that is reflecting itself. Some specular lights on that to make it really pop. Put that in. I'm loving some of the designs here on the arm. The arm shape stays readable, but yet you got these beautiful sort of lyrical curves pulling up the arm, and yeah, that's really nice. The thing with that though is I would break the shape of them some so that they don't follow within the same curve and sort of silhouette as this shoulder piece here. So if you want some coming off, I mean, I'm all for that, but let's actually make it kind of one of the selling points. Let's go ahead and have some of them pulling off doing this sort of thing, right? And it's okay. He can have this trailing sort of turns and twists off the arm there. That's nice. I don't know that. I don't know if this would be entirely MTG crop. You know, if the crop would work for the card, but I'm not going to make that an issue. I didn't give you a template to follow. I'm just going to note it for people to be aware. You are provided also a guide template that kind of has this box and says you've got to get all of the major character information in this box. Everything else is covered up with text and framing and stuff. So I didn't give it to you. I'm not going to hold you to that. I just thought I'd mention it because it is part of the process if you're actually illustrating for Magic. But this is a lovely image. I'm considering about actually scaling him down slightly. It's that he's looking off to the left, and we don't have much room for him to be looking that way. I'm gonna see about just kind of doing that sort of thing with him. Just giving him a little room there. I feel like that would be a little more comfortable. Okay, so beside this, what was some of my other thoughts? Oh, I was going to push the values and the colors a little bit. Overall, it's getting a bit soft in some of the values and the colors. So I turn on this levels, and it's a small adjustment. Well, trying to get this to a size that fills the screen without being little or too big. Right about there. There we go. So a little values change there, and then a small vibrant, so it just pushes the colors up like 5%. Okay. And this got in just before I was getting ready to start setting up the streaming information, so I haven't really looked at it much. The edges is one thing I'm particularly looking at for the legs. They seem particularly harsh which I would understand if you've got everything on different layers, but I would be looking at getting some of this back tone a little lighter and letting that soften out on the edges and the roundness of some of these, because they feel a little too cut out, they feel a little too planar, and we want to give them a bit of roundness to make them feel more cylindrical or spherical. And so just letting there kind of be a mid-tone running along some of those lines would really help that to soften out and make it less of a cutout. And we could bring in a little more tonal variation to maybe some of these. Not a lot. You don't want to break the overall values of them. But it's just separating kind of the different pieces there. And also on some of this gold down here, you could even have a bit of a sheen on some of it. So that's not going to get lost. So kind of there in the middle, you can bring in some of that green tone that you've already established. Make that feel a bit more metallic. You could get it darker if you wanted in actually the lit areas. Averagely, most of it's darker, but then you have your pop of light tone on some of the spots. But then in the shadows, you could have it averaging maybe a little bit lighter. Show up there. All right, were you noticing anything here that you would mention, Anna?
So I also thought the contrast, and for the face, for the jaw, it feels like he could need a little bit more, more thickness on the jaw. It looks a little bit like between chin and the edge of his jaw. This line
Yeah.
could be a little bit more pushed downwards. It feels a little bit thin there, like the skull would not have enough space. So, yeah, a little bit more rounded downward. Yeah, but other than that, really cool. I didn't find anything else that I would comment on. So,
And on some of these other little spheres you've got, these could really be popping with a bit more light to give them a gleamy look to it. And we could have a pretty dark shadow areas. And then get that reflected light sort of bouncing back on them from the other color, but it's cooler. Running on those sorts of tones here. The shadow like this. And then the area where it's lighting back on itself. So here in the middle is where it's kind of catching its own light from the other one. That's when it's going to get extra orange. Trying to grab the right tone somewhere around there. So I'm looking at maybe a little change there. And again, that they were just getting a little soft in their values. So some of these could be getting a bit heavier in their reflection area and warmer an area where they're getting bounce light off of the other gold. Let's see, what else? The tree, I think the tree also could use some love, mainly around the edges. It has the same sort of cutout feeling. So I'd be looking to come in here and just breaking that up with some little strokes, letting there be a little more randomness to kind of the edges of where the vegetation is growing, the little mossy stuff is there. even on the underside. And we might add a little more fill light to the top of this in order for it to help feel a bit more rounded. So you could add one more level of lightness to some of this vegetation. I'm going to just grab a bit of a lighter green. Pop up some of it a little brighter. And on these, I try to add a little more light on them too, in order just to say they're slightly more lit on one side or another, in order to get more of a cylindrical feel to them. And we could be looking at adding in some of the, basically they're wrinkles, little wrinkles around the joints. Same way that, you know, skin wrinkles has to bend as it grows. Yeah. Bit of love on those. This bad guy is maybe a little too dark. So that's a really minor thing, but I'd probably soften him out a bit more. Yeah, small stuff here. I really think it's pulling together well. So that would be my major thoughts. Just going around looking at some of the edges and playing with those. And maybe popping up a little more contrast on some of the different elements. Breaking the silhouette or the shape there with some of the golden bits going off. They may even get smaller. They may stay like little golden kind of spirally shapes that sort of float off, and that might be neat. This arm does feel like I almost want some light on it. Either cool light or warm light. I sort of keep coming back to it. Now, I would want to play to see which one it is, whether you have some cool light coming down on here. But I feel like this hand just needs a little light. And you can even put some on the tree as well, if you put some on his hand. So you have something to kind of play with there and bring out that tree shape. And you could bring it into the little stuff up here as well. I feel like something there would help it. Otherwise, it feels all just a little flat. Alright, well, wrap it up. That one. Michaela, beautiful piece. Look forward to seeing what you do with it. As always, guys, if you go back and do some more work on them, post them in the group so the rest of them can be inspired. Okay, now we're looking at Nicole Nator. Hey, Clint and Anna, this has been a wonderful learning experience. Good, good. Really pushed this one as far as I would, time would allow. Putting my skills into the test. After the feedback, I plan on polishing it and putting it in my portfolio. I think I am lacking a little in the materials department. Some materials don't read well as they could. Looking forward to your comments. Don't worry, Anna will sort you out.
No, actually, we already had some talk on Discord earlier before she finished this up. So I think she's much more interested in what you have to say. But I'll give my little start. So I think overall the painting a little bit dark in general. So I would bring a little bit more of the midtones back. I'd push the brightness also for the ethereal arm and the light it how to say emits the light. Wow, my English just got better. So the and where it hits the character in general, put a little bit more of brightness in these parts in order to push the material. I think she means generally the metal, so I don't know which parts are supposed maybe to be maybe the one
I was wondering that too.
So for example, we could make the squarish shaped thingy on his belt. We could make that metal by just pushing the contrast and adding some really strong highlights, for example, I'd say. Yeah, and what else? Oh yeah, she had made the effort to make a template for the card and put the character on top of it. and it's quite common to have the hat of the character being a little bit overlapping the title.
Yes.
But I've thought about in the piece, it's not disturbing me much, but with the card template, I feel like the ponytail is having quite of an awkward look.
Yes.
So it would look really weird if it was sitting on top of the card like that. So I would change the direction of the hair, or the shape of it in general.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I want to go to up to this point and see what Clint has to say.
Yeah, your initial thought was mine as well, which is overall, especially the background getting a bit dark, which is a real shame because there's a really nice landscape back there.
Yep.
Oh, lots of nice waterfalls and mountains and clouds and all kinds of stuff. So my first thing would be to pop up the values in that a bit. And I particularly like some of your reference images down here. This waterfall location. Offhand, I'm not sure where that is, but it looks really, really fantastic. So I did put in some exposure and value adjustments to kind of indicate what I was thinking about there. So I just ran a levels in order to pop up some tones, and I popped them up mainly in the background, but also put a little on the face to help accentuate some of the light on the face. And then using an exposure to help bring out the tones right around towards the center of where the character is, and getting that color there. Because we can get the background fairly light and still accept it as being overcast, stormy sky. That gets it a good pop up brighter, and that also brings in more color because we're not so dark in tones. Next up, I'd be using a hard light layer, looking at trying to bring out more of the glow, like you said, emanating more light. It's more of a light source, not just shape there. So I just a real quick change of hard light to try to put that on there. Then I have a normal layer where I did a bit of a paint over, trying to address primarily values. Looking at value changes here. Grab it like I'm gonna put these side by side so we can. Let's like no, it does not want to go sideways. There we go. Okay, so here we have kind of the direction that I was thinking of shifting things more to the midtones, like what you were saying, Anna. Exactly the sort of approach I'd be thinking of as well, and getting more of that golden light from this, and looking to treat the legs more like silhouettes and flattening out the values here, letting those read as darker against the background, and letting a lot more atmospherics take control of the background there in the bottom where all the ends of the waterfalls are. And I can imagine that there was a lot of spray being kicked up back in that area. Also looking at using more atmospherics to soften out some of the tones back here, and that things in the foreground will ultimately be able to be darker than things in the background in a scene like this. So his black hair should probably be the darkest thing in the scene. Right now we have a lot of stuff in the background that is just as dark as everything in the foreground. That's why we're trying to lower that overall dark level and help it pop a better sense of depth into the scene. And also reworked planes of the face. Move these over, maybe we can see these kind of on the same page. And I was looking at your photograph down there from the 3D model, and looking at the planes and seeing like this plane darker, you got that, but where it gets into the other fill light source, it's going to have that cooler tone. And so I'm just treating this in a bit more planar way than you are, and accentuating the light and shadow difference between those. So it's some small stuff, But it also goes down into like the arm. We have the top of the arm being really well lit. In fact, we have a good amount of light hitting on the tops of a lot of this stuff over here on this side. And I just don't see that it's necessary. So I would be inversing it. So we have basically a light on the left side of the body, a shadow slash dark on the right side, and then we can have enough brighter cool tones back here for that shadowed side of the character to stand out. Running that direction with it. I think that would be more of a card art approach, because things that get dark, kind of like what we have here in the background, that's basically going to be lost on a card. And we're going to try to keep more stuff to the mid-tones possible. Alright, any concluding thoughts?
No, I have nothing to add to that. I really like how it looks now, much more color and a little bit cleaner as well. So this is how I imagine a MTG card to be, and I think
Yeah.
she got a really nice direction. And have a good night, Nito. I know you're gonna go to sleep probably a little bit because you're having headache now. So get some rest. She's asking how could I push the gold? She's also asking.
For the gold, I find that
Maybe,
it's usually there's just a couple of guidelines that I use that usually can get me pretty close. Definitely go look at references, but let's take this gold at the edge of your trim here, and I'm gonna just grab a color variance brush. I'm gonna start with most of it being, oh, helps when you're on the right layer. I'm gonna start with most of it being a bit darker than I would normally think. I'm gonna put that in there. And it's a little too grayed out, so I'm using tones that are slightly warmer. Although some people get much too warm. They treat it almost like orange, and it's not really orange. It usually has a fair amount of yellow and green, especially in a location like this where there's a lot of cool light. And then the next thing you want to do is anytime that it's going to be reflecting back on itself, it's going to get extra warm. So I'm going to grab kind of that warmer here. And that would be like areas where it's going to hit down there on this side of the fabric and bounce over. That's kind of going to get extra warm. And then when it highlights, it has a tendency to highlight a lot. And so it's going to get really bright. You could even do and this sometimes, linear dodge with like a brown. And it can get pretty close in giving you the right tone. Usually you need to go back and work with it, but it might be able to get you close. Some of that is probably going to be catching light down there. And look for places that are edges and angle changes. Like along this edge, you're probably going to be catching some there. Definitely be catching some along here. Along that way. And then see about adding in a little more of your color variance. So this is sort of a green tone. I can see that coming in here, and I'd be putting in a little verticalness and keeping it from being perfect, because it's still fabric and it's kind of wobbly and it's not going to reflect things perfectly. And even up into here, it's going to have this sort of wobbliness to it. I'm going to limit that down. A little less highlight on that. And I don't want it, I want it a little brighter here so it shows up, but I don't want it as warm because it is sort of in a shadowy area. So it's going to brighten up towards the green. And that sort of warm tone down here, I'll let that play up in the shadow area. But it can also get quite dark. If it is surrounded by a lot of other dark stuff, then it can get pretty dark. Put that in. There you go. That would be a little example of approaching the gold, just using a couple of basic guidelines of sort of how gold works and what its material behavior is. And then that could be serving as your direction. And then go take a look at some actual gold, cloth and edging and see if there's some particularities that you could add in that maybe you missed. They go, oh, okay, well, yeah, I didn't think that it may also have this other little tone. If I want this edge to show up, I might add this extra tone along the edge so that I have a sense of depth there. And this might have a little reflection here. What do you think about that? Does that make sense and follow along with that advice?
This is looking great.
Okay.
Like, amazing how fast you can do that. Yeah. Watching you, I think art should be super easy. It looks easy when you do.
Yeah, totally, God, that's so easy. How did you not know how to do that? I mean, I only spent a week studying it so I can make a lesson about it, but come on. Yeah, good stuff. Planeswalker 1015 is up. Oh, man, I'm going slow. Sorry, I didn't realize it was already 4:10. Wow, sorry guys. Okay. So let's see if we not dilly-dally so much. My first submission was rejected because it didn't fit MTG. Yeah, you went more with the magic thing. So I scratched it and started fresh. Good. This is pretty much my first time painting, so my process is really chaotic and experimental. Hey, check out my new illustration process, Pegasus. It will help you out. I struggled with the following, and perhaps you could touch on them. So let's try to address some of these questions. I can't visualize the value study all the way through. Oh, lost my spot. I can only get to a rough stage until I need colors to be able to see it. Is that okay? That sort of defeats the idea of a value study. Value is always going to be more important than colors. So don't move on to the value stage until you know your colors. Don't move to the colors until you know your values. And I think it's just you're not having an idea of how to approach the value stage. I go over this in the new material, so when it comes out, I do recommend picking it up. But the simplistic version is try dividing the scene into planes. In this case, your 3 planes would basically be, and see if I can do an overlay here, illustrate it so people can understand kind of what I'm saying. We'll say that the foreground is basically him and that rock. And we'll not count the little red guys. He and the rock are basically foreground. The midground is going to be all of that ground up to the top of the waterfall. So maybe we'll do that in this red tone. And then this is what you're thinking of. You're trying to divide this into planes to begin with. This will be straightforward. And then everything back there is going to be the far background. Then you assign each one of these a value level. Is it light? Is it medium? Is it dark? And you can try them in each variation. It doesn't take very long for you to run through that. So you just have your lines on one layer, then underneath there, and the lines are set to multiply. Then underneath there, you assign either he's dark, he's medium, or he's light. And then you can only use one for one, right? You can't do, oh, he's dark and the midground is dark. No. He's dark, and then that maybe is medium, and then the background is light. Then that means that you have a limited values that you can use in each range. And this will keep each plane separate. I don't have the lines to work from, but we could try doing, I'm going to do a multiply, and I'm not really going to touch on the colors or even that much about the design or anything, because right now this is probably the most important thing you need to learn. So this is what we're going to talk about for the moment. I'm going to just desaturate that, and then I'm going to push this so it's line-like. Multiply. Oh no, not multiply. I'll do multiply on the other one. Yeah. And then I'm going to grab a tone about like this and say that he is in shadow. And all of him has to exist within a certain value range. And we still have light and dark within that range. And I'm just averaging these out. I know this outline is... we still have dark and light within that range, but it's limited to a certain value range. And then I'm going to sort of half that distance to midtones and say that the midtones... no, quite enough. Or actually, I could grab everything inversed of that. That would be a lot faster. We have our midground is midtones. And you can do this different ways. Maybe he's the light, and the midtones is the background, and the midground is the dark. So you can get those three and put them in each variation and see how the values work out. And that's sort of already light tones. So that could work. Or you could inverse it there, and that's sort of cool too. So you have a light background, a dark midground, and a medium foreground. All right. So this is just, you're trying to set each plane to have a job. And let's back up. So I grab this. I could also do a gradient. I go over this and I example all this stuff in the new video. You can do gradient style. So you're going to be going from light to dark coming down there. So high contrast on that. We can grab everything that's the inverse of it. And the whole idea is you're trying to place light things against dark things and vice versa. So I don't want to go real dark down here because that is going to put a dark on dark pairing. Dark on dark pairing. And I would rather have like a dark on medium, and that's okay. Maybe I do it a bit like this, or I want that to actually stay lighter down there, but where it goes light on the top of him, I want that to be a light on dark pairing, so that stands out. So this color scheme right here this value scheme right here actually works pretty well, and I think that's fairly dynamic. So the light sort of catching the top of him, it's getting darker as it goes down, but then that range down there behind him is actually catching some of the light that is hitting him, and that works quite well, I think. Grab the inverse again. And perhaps a little more of this is darkened up so that we get some more contrast there. And that's kind of cool. So that would be working as sort of value study in itself. And I'm not concerned at all about individual abs or folds or the pieces of fabric or metal and stuff. I'm just looking at the average tones of all of that. Skype. Oh, Discord died? Okay. Well, I can open Skype here. I need to switch over to my other screen. Nope, that. Yeah, there we go. Okay, hang on, let me open this for a second first. Discord server went down. Huh, I didn't know that it goes down very often. Y'all, I'm opening up Skype. We'll get that to work. Oh, sorry, that's loud.
Test?
Yeah, I think you're good.
I I hope people can hear me. Yeah, it
Uh,
suddenly went down. I don't know what happened. It was like boop, and everything was gone. And I could not open it. It's like I even went to Task Manager to finish the task of Discord, but it won't let me. It sticks there in the Task Manager, and you cannot end it to reboot it or something. I don't know what's happening here. Well, it's okay. We got Skype. All good.
yeah, Skype is turned up, so I'm gonna turn her down a little bit so it evens out. There we go. Let us know after a little bit if that's better. Okay, yeah, so we were just talking about the value scheme and sort of working in big patterns. You're thinking of foreground, midground, background, and assigning a value or a gradient to each one, and trying to pair light things against dark things and dark things against light things. So here we have the Skype window in my way, and I can't get to my colors. There we go. We have light and dark and dark and light and dark and light, light and dark. And so these are all working. And sometimes you do need a gradient because you want to switch the what the pattern is. So this is allowed to go from dark through your mediums and to your darks so that the background can do the same. The background is making the opposite gradient. So he's going from darks to his mediums to his lights, and that way that you always have that value contrast going each way. Yeah. Okay. I'll pass that, which is the main thing you probably want to be focusing on. He is a bit squished, so I feel like he's a little compressed. I straightened him out a little bit. His torso just did that, and then pulled his legs down. I feel like that is more natural. Here, you look at that little difference there. And that feels more normal. Yeah. Let's go with that little change there. I do like the energy of the fabric. And it's kind of interesting, this pattern that he goes up around his neck and back over. This, however, is getting a little messy for me. This needs some attention. The knot, there's multiple knots and fabrics and stuff all going on along the belt. And so let's see maybe about simplifying that back there. Well, if you do hear something in the background, you might be hearing my AC. I would turn it off, but it is just too hot today to not have the AC going right now. Sorry. I do have the gain turned up, but maybe it's not enough. Right now, I don't know what these red things are, so we will need some more attention on those. And I'm probably going to get rid of this one right here in the foreground. If you're going to have one in the foreground, we want to put one more at like this angle, and not right there towards the middle. And it's likely going to be considerably bigger than that. Like, it's going to be more like this. We want to put it as a distinct foreground element that has the detail on it, so we know what it is, we know what it's made of, and then we can extrapolate that sort of information to the other ones. And the ones back here might just be tiny, right, in order to try to get a better sense of depth. Yeah. All right, any thoughts on this one? I mean, we covered quite a bit, but toss something in if you were thinking of it.
Yeah, so I missed now most of it because I'm trying to fix my PC. I only just had jotted down that he was not so visible because of the drapery and the background having the same forms and shapes like the drapery again, and I couldn't make out where is what. And yeah, I think you fixed most of these issues already with your overpaint and the squished feeling and those red pillars. These are the things that I also wrote down. So I think we're good to go. I'm sorry that I did not take much part here, but yeah.
No, I just wanted to give you the chance in case you had something there.
Yeah.
I do like the designs of these knee pieces. Those are kind of cool. So I like those. I would see about maybe utilizing a bit more of those designs up around the neck. These are almost like the petal sort of patterns that are interplaying with each other. We don't see that elsewhere. It'd be nice to maybe see some more of that up here, or if it was a subtle design throughout some of this gold, then that could work as well. Okay. And back to one. Shawn is up next. Shawn says, apologies in advance, had to move this week. That's a time hole right there. So I didn't get a finished rendering. We understand. If you have to move, you don't get as much done. No one does. Hopefully now it's feeling a little less Samurai Jack. I would love some advice on rendering fabric, as I'm having a hard time without a one-to-one reference. Also feel as if he's starting to look evil, which isn't intentional. Yeah, he does seem like he could be the villain at this point. I think that has to do mainly with just how shaded he is. Very, very dark. But style-wise, this style hasn't changed much. Still, the main thing here is I don't see any references for the actual fabrics or subjects from the scene. I see a style reference, and I see one face reference. And I see a reference for the background, but I don't see that you really followed it. So if you're wondering how to get fabric to look more real, then you gotta go look at fabric and draw what it looks like. To this point, you are still only drawing your idea of something and not what it looks like. Which is fine if you're going for that style. But if you're trying to do more realistic stuff, then you can't be drawing your idea of it. You have to actually go draw it. And you do that by going and finding images of it and drawing it. So I'm going to pause there. Did you have some thoughts on this, Anna?
Yeah, so also my very first note is get refs. I don't see how much she got further with this painting in comparison to the last time. I think there were not many changes as far as I can recall by now, so it's a little bit hard to critique this now because it's not very far rendered. So beside getting refs, the ref of the lighting direction from your video or PDF or something that you have on your store is a nice thing to have, but in that case where Clint put the light is directly behind the character and very, very close to the character. It's like he's standing in front of a very bright light source and your character isn't.
Yeah.
There is no, I don't think that this will fulfill the purpose that you need here. So I would put maybe the light source on the right side, just have the the lights on the right side as well, so on the rim lights on the right side as well. So I would reconsider that. Also have more of a fill light, a camera light, something that's coming from the front to fill in the forms would be really useful. He's super dark, we don't see much of him. Or making the arm another light source that is shining light on him. So yeah, it's all not very taken far, so I can't say much more rather than get references, put more the light, put more effort into the lighting, and that were my initial thoughts.
Yeah, the first thing we have to do is just bring up some of the values in the guy so that we can see what we're looking at. And then see about toning back maybe some of this color that's super, super pink. And so I'm just glazing like a gray over it, just trying to mute it down a little bit so we have some more focus on the dude. But it's all going to be about going and finding photo reference in this case. I mean, you can get to the point where you can study stuff enough that you don't need as much, but at this point you have it, and so that's what you need to do. And so I would say, like, try actually painting this guy's head very closely, because right now it's only your idea, and it's not based on any kind of reality. So go do like copies, and there is a reason to do copies. The reason to do copies is to improve your observational skills, of your observational accuracy, that you have to learn when needed to accurately reproduce reality. And so I'm gonna say, like, go do a portrait study of this thing, of this guy's face down here. It's pretty well lit, there's good forms, there's good colors, and see how accurate you can get. And this will get you used to finding and gathering more information out of your reference. And then what you can do is, after you do a realistic study of this guy, then go draw your face utilizing the same sort of lighting and the same sort of colors. So that you get that information, you familiarize yourself with it, and then you basically recompile it for a different usage. You have to apply it in a new way. So that would be a good way to do it. And the same thing with the fabric. Go find a piece of fabric, and you can just go to Google and just like blowing white fabric. You'll find something. I mean, it might take you 2 minutes, but 2 minutes. And then go do a rendering of that. The first thing you want to do, if you're going to be doing a fabric and trying to improve fabric, is just do drawing reference and drawing studies, where you're looking at the way that it bends and how it folds, right? And you're just wanting to learn how it behaves, and you want to do some behavior drawings. And then after you do that for a while, then you want to do some value studies of it. And then after you do those studies, come down here and do yours with one that is very similar. Or do what I've shown before, which is get an actual photo element and put a photo element in part of it. You don't necessarily need to do the whole thing, and you probably won't be able to find one that's perfect. But if you even have a photo element to get started on part of it, then you can kind of extrapolate how those forms would continue, and you can be using the same values and the same sort of form behavior into the rest of it. So yeah, just for you, if you're trying to get to the more realistic side of things, Shawn, then we got to be doing a lot more study from life. And it's about doing that study and then applying that information and the lighting, the materials, and that sort of stuff to a new subject. And that's a good way to really assimilate that knowledge. And like Anna was talking about, the lighting here is kind of odd. We need a lot more fill light on him. And just going forward, like if you're going to be continuing with this image, we could see about adding in, say, a hard light layer and letting that arm be more of a light source, one that's a little more colored. And so his body is being lit more by this. But this isn't a spotlight. It's not going to create super harsh light and shadow patterns. This is going to be more like just a golden sort of firelight. And so you're going to have that sort of going across the character, and that's cool. And this would be able to create more of a... Oh, no. Lost opacity again. A silhouette on some of the rest of the body, and that's nice as well. But this background, we probably want to tone that down or add in some different tones to it. And if you do want a backlight on it, that's possible. I'm going to use a linear dodge layer and try to maybe use that. Grab some of this kind of back purple tone, and we're going to get more of a color from it, right? And it's not going to just be so So white. I'm trying to get something a little bit warmer. We get some more color out of it. And this sort of thing going on. We might catch some on the rocks and stuff too. Yeah. And we want to try to bring some form to this guy. Either we're going to have some light catching in this cape area, or that's going to be in shade and maybe, again, keeps doing that. And then it's going to be catching maybe some light on this back leg or something. And then we could have some spill light on that side as the light kind of comes through. And so that can be in shadow. And again, I'm always looking for like, this is light, this is dark, or this is dark and this is light. And you're trying to use limited values, but keep that same direction going on all of it. And then if you want some pops of color kind of coming around him, and maybe there is a light source. Maybe there is like a setting sun back there behind him, and that's possible. That can be cool. And these guys are going to be catching some light like back up here too. Yep, that's kind of what I would do. I think it's a cool character. I like his pose. I like the overall scene. It's working well. I think the sort of the pinky violet background is something that's a little unusual, but it works with like a violet gold sort of dynamic. You almost have this complementary color scheme going on with those two, and yeah, I'd say go with it. Keep working with it. Go look at your references and do some studies, get that knowledge, and apply it back into your image. All right, last one we're going to be taking a look at is Travis Earls. Travis says he was concerned with not making the colors gray last time, that he got carried away. You went for the whole crayon box last time. I hope this is a better balance, although I'm honestly not sure. I could definitely use some pros of this piece along with cons, because I'm not really sure what I did right or wrong. Thanks for everything. Did you have a chance to look at this? Get any ideas of what you got here?
Yes, so I think I really liked the cloth, the drapery on the lower part of the painting. I like the flow and the subsurface gathering he added there, so this is pretty nice. I think that there is, at least to my taste, a little bit too much of saturated colors everywhere. Also, the colors are all yellow-red, and I feel like when you have like warm light and also warm shadows, then your painting starts to look muddy, and I feel like this is happening in some parts of this painting here.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like some parts of the skin and the beads and on the clothes, at some point too, they just look a little bit muddy. His neck, for example, also has really really thin lines, and it looks a little bit unnatural too. What else did I write down? Very contrast, very saturated, very similar colors. Well, yeah, this is basically the main things that were troubling me a little bit. The beads, I'm not sure whether they are chrome. They look a little bit chrome to me instead of gold. I don't know whether he wanted to go for it to look like gold metal or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They look really chromatic to me. In general, it's really this values, these colors, edges that makes this piece very busy, and your eyes don't find a place to rest. It's like they're going like, wow, what is there? There's also a lot of detail, and so I'm not getting let through the painting. I'm a little bit overwhelmed by everything. It's all saturated and all contrasty and all warm, and yeah, I think there is some balance needed in this piece. The most harmonious and the, for my eyes, easiest to look at is the drapery at the lower part. It looks soft and nice, and this warm light coming through the more cold colored material. This is kind of nice, and I wish he had pulled this over the whole character. You know what I mean? Like push
Yes.
through that. So, but drapery looks nice. The rest is a little bit busy and harsh. Yeah, but it's for my first impressions.
No, I think those are good first impressions. And I've been glancing at the chat too, and it seems like most people are sort of on the same boat as you, which is a lot of heavy saturation. But this cloth in the bottom is probably the most successful part down here. It's really nice to look at, and it has quite in League of Legends sort of rendering style to it, actually.
Yeah.
The way that that's done, and this is complicated. You've got complicated stuff going on here because you've got two bright light sources on the character, and it can be like, well, which one's brighter, and how is everything not hot, and how do I keep things sort of managed? And at some point, you have to stop kind of getting inside of your own head and saying, I'm not going to compute this all, so it's perfectly right and it makes sense in a logical way. At some point, you have to say, I need to do what this image needs it done, right? Which is, if this is getting too hot, I need to tone it down. Or if I need to get more cooler colors, I just need to do that. And I don't even necessarily need to answer why, I just know that it needs to be done. And so you go do it. And that's one of the things I'm doing right now, is I'm trying to expand that color wheel out, your gamut out, so that we can actually use a few other colors, some cooler colors. Like the pants here, I don't know what color those were supposed to be. They were just so heavily this purple tone. And I assumed that they were supposed to be white or black. I mean, white or gold. But they're too dark to be white. And so, yeah, that's what I'm trying to simplify here is... And like the contrast is really, really high. So I'm going to glaze over and use some of these tones that you actually have down here in this other fabric and try to establish a little more with the color change where it doesn't have to be so heavy with the value change. And again, guys, values are so important. That's one of the reasons we're stressing, go do the art club. Work with the values. This is one of the things that we just keep going over and over in the challenges, and that, yeah, colors can be an issue, but ultimately, it's often the values that make the difference. And so I'm just trying to expand it out here, and if the thing is in the shadow, it's going to take on the color of the shadow, and we're establishing that the shadows are a little cooler. Now, they're not blue, right? They're not this. Right? They're just cooler in comparison to how crazy hot everything else is. So I'm trying to do that, and also just establish the value range for the gold. And the gold is, on average, darker than the white fabric. So expanding that out a bit there. I'm with you. These are very chromy, but I'm also going to expect that they're going to continue up over the shoulders. So I'm going to add a couple more there. I think the bright reflection off of the golden arm, good, got that. We could have some of that nice warm light coming in on that other side. Then we're going to have some of that kind of warm gold tone where they're reflecting each other. Then the rest of it could actually be probably fairly dark. I'm going to just darken those up a bit. And like this probably doesn't need much light on it, or if it does, we're going to average it out more. This is just getting really busy, so maybe that gold is all getting dark. We're going to average this skin out a little bit more. All of this skin is getting very contrasty, and I'm going to try to even out those tones a little bit. So yeah, and same thing, you mentioned it, like the contrast just gives this real line sort of feeling up there with the head. This is where we need to get some good lighting reference. You know what? We could probably get more out of your photo of your roommate here. We pull it up and take a look at it. Yeah, there's some good information here. So, it's not exactly the same, but I think it's probably going to actually give us more better information than what we have right now. So let's pull up and take a look. Let's just simplify this and say that this skin tone is not going to be quite that dark. We don't need to lose that much dark. We're going to soften out some of the skin tone. We're also going to just say, okay, that's in shadow now. I'm going to follow my reference. Sometimes, even if your reference isn't perfect, if you actually follow it, at least the viewer accepts it as being consistent to itself. Even if it's not completely consistent with the rest of the scene, it will look natural. It will look normal, and so you accept it. And that's kind of what we see here, is that maybe that light would actually be catching the underside of that eye over there. But I would rather it just be accurate to it, accurate to something, even if it's not accurate exactly to itself. To the rest of the scene, I mean. Yeah. Just, I'll shadow there. And this is all getting quite dark, so we're going to see about. Again, think about the spherical nature of this. You're going to have more of these tones. Tones facing upwards are going to be cooler. I'm looking at upward facing planes and seeing if we can establish those. And then maybe some of these underforms, we'll go ahead and get a little darker there. And then this edge light, we want to separate the colors of these lights a little bit so that they aren't necessarily creating the same color. If you want this back here to be warm as well, maybe we shift it to being slightly more violet in tone and not so golden, right? So you got more of this beautiful violet, and the ears a little dark. Pop there. We're not doubling up on the exact same colors. One is to the yellow side, and one is to the violet side. And a little bit there on the chin. And I'm actually going to use a dodge just to push the highlights up a little bit more so I don't have to go repaint them. Alright, you can spend a while like messing around getting the face accurate. I'm not. I'm just putting in the basic tones. And you can kind of see that there though. Brighten up maybe more of this. That's getting too dark in there. We're going to brighten that up a little bit more. That's not going to get so dark along that edge. Probably going to have some spill of this around the ear. Some of that coming down here as well. This way. The same sort of upward facing tones along a lot of the chest here. We're going to get those. And that over here as well. Upward facing cool tones over here on the white fabric. All of this white fabric. And all this fabric is basically going to become silhouetted, because it's going to have a light source inside of it. But it doesn't necessarily need to be the exact same golden color as everything else. So we can do that, and then the light source inside of it. Okay, Mr. Fly, find something else to land on, dude. I'm going to start with a really nice golden that is going through there between the seams and the different pieces. And then you can use your really bright one to sort of sit in the middle of that golden tone to give it more of a sense of glowing. Yeah. And I was thinking maybe having a bit more of a cool sort of glow effect coming out from around where the fingers are touching. Yeah. I like the backlit stuff there. I'm brightening up just a lot of that white fabric. We're letting the white fabric get very, very dark very quickly. And if this gold stuff is over here, this gold stuff is probably going to be reflecting the environment quite a bit at that angle. Again, the Fresnel effect of it wanting to reflect stuff at an extreme angle. So you're going to get a lot of this going on. Probably going to be picking up some of this angle there. And might let some of that go off dark on the end. Could be getting some of the bright light catching along this. Okay, blend up some of that detail. And then some of the cool tones likely being caught in the gold. But that's probably too blue. We're probably needing to shift more to the green side. Probably too much there. Some of this stuff may be catching a little bit brighter. Okay, I'm thinking that that takes it in the right direction. I mean, it's not sufficient. You keep working on it, but pushing a lot more of those cool tones, or at least getting close to the grays, which feel a lot cooler, because we say that's cool, but it's still right there within the red range. It's just much further to the gray side, and distinguishing the color difference between the two light sources, and following any good reference, any reference for the face and the head. Like, I'm just basically following this, and maybe that's not exactly the lighting direction that we need on this, but it makes it feel more natural. Otherwise, we're guessing at too much. I would say that if you're going to try to light the face so it has a lot more of that underlight thing going on, then we need to go shoot another image that has the light that way, or go look up that 3D model online where you can have the head and rotate the head and rotate the additional light, and use that to figure out what sort of pattern you're going to get. Okay, so I've just been running on for a while on that. Any thoughts on that, Anna? Do you think that's taking it a better direction? How do you feel from kind of the outside of that?
Yeah, this improved it so much. I really like how you got the feeling from the button drapery more pushed upwards into the character, and it's much more harmonious now. And yeah, I'm really looking forward, Travis, what you will make out of it. So you got a really solid base there. And as you saw, it's just some minor tweaks, and yeah, then you're pushing this to a really, really good painting.
Yeah, I did have a note there. I forgot to mention. I'll put some cirrus clouds in here. A little thinner, wispy guys. Doing this sort of thing. It's just the sky is really bland. And you could just use these as kind of compositional little tools. And remember, you don't want them just one color. Even on them, have sort of a light dark pattern. So maybe the underside of them is catching more light. The top of them is a little bit darker. And not the same edges on all of them. They do soften out in a couple of places. Just make it a little more dynamic. Okay, well, we're running at 3 hours. We need to wrap up this stream. But remember, guys, new challenge, something a bit different. It'll go on sale tomorrow. Tickets for the feedback. If you want to give feedback on stream, you're going to be picking out one of your favorite science fiction characters, one of your favorite characters from Myth. Show me an image where they're fighting. Right? You will be given this. This is just a scene of different characters fighting. And something like this, inspired by kind of a League of Legends scene, or these are from Mage Wars, the board game box covers. So, that sort of thing. And we will look at that in 2 weeks if you want to get into that. Of course, join us out on the Discord server. Remember, guys, though, as you go throughout your week and you're working on your images, that being an artist is fun. Have a good time. Enjoy it. It can be a lot of hard work, but it's a rewarding thing to do. And also remember that while you're enjoying it and while you're working hard, it really doesn't matter. Because at the end of our days, what we create doesn't matter. We should work hard because that's the right thing to do. We should enjoy our work because that's the right thing to do. But ultimately, it's who we are before our creator. Because we have one. You don't have a painting without a painter. You don't have a sculpture without a sculptor. You don't have a creation without a creator. So, if you don't know him, you ought to know him. The better you know him, the better you'll be a creator. So, if you don't know him, go read the book of Matthew. You'll find he's a pretty cool guy. Okay, well, I will catch you out online. Discord's up and going. Have more questions. If you have any concerns about getting in the challenge, or if there's a character that you want to use that you don't know about, then just shoot me a message. I'll try to get back to you so that you can know whether you want to jump in or not. All right. For Swatches, until you see you next time, keep drawing.